What's up, everyone? It's your girl, Miss Derby, aka the Land Queen. And on today's episode, we have Francisco Caballero joining us to talk about how he was able to use systems and automations to scale his business to 6 figures. Let's listen in. Thank you, Francisco, so much for coming out. I really appreciate you. We go way back, and I feel like a lot of people don't know that about us. Is we have a really deep history when we got, just starting in real estate. So
tell me about it.
Yeah, I want to start off just kind of asking you, how did you get into real estate? Like, where were you at with that?
So first of all, thank you for having me. I appreciate being on the podcast. And how did I get into real estate? Started off with rejection at the first time, right? So it was a combination of two things that was going on at the same time. So one, my uncle, which was my dad's brother, he was heavily into real estate, right? And I always used to see him like go to different houses, and I knew what he did as a profession was build houses. And then I remember distinctly one time asking him if he could like show me real estate, right? Okay. And he just flat out said no. He was like, no. That's cool. And then at the same time, I had a friend named Jocelyn that I was working with at the time at this call center. And she was begging me and bugging me for months to like get my real estate license. And then at first, I didn't really want to because I was like, oh, I wasn't a people's person when I was like 19, 20, right? So I wasn't a people's person at all. And I didn't think real estate would be even in the realm of opportunity. But she was bugging me to get into real estate. And I wasn't really necessarily taking it serious because, again, I wasn't a people's person at the time. And then, after months of begging me on to get the real estate license, I ended up taking the course. And then midway through, I wanted to quit. I was like, this is not for me. This just is old guy reading a book in front of you, reading a whole bunch of vocabulary words. And I'm over here just kind of like, bro, I'm just ready to go home.
I heard the real estate test is hard.
It wasn't to me because of based on how I studied. But midway through when I was about to quit, that's when I found out about Max Maxwell. So like I always say like at least 95% of people that get started in real estate started because of Max.
Of course.
Because around like that 2018, that 2019 era, he was like legit documenting his like day-to-day business journey in the wholesaling real estate. So I gravitated towards that. And that was the only thing that kept me inside of that real estate course. Wow. Because when he started talking about like assigners and assignees and all that stuff, we just so happened to be on that exact chapter.
Oh, so it's all started clicking together.
Literally. And I remember it was chapter 11. And that was like, boom. That's when it all clicked for me. Then the professor's voice or the teacher's voice went from blah, 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 blah to I actually started understanding what it was that he was talking about after that. And then, that's kind of how I got started into like getting into the real estate space. So
I know when we kind of linked up, I think I found you in like Max's group, right?
I think that it was actually Max's group.
Yeah.
What it was, Wholesaling Houses Elite or something?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember finding you in there and messaging you and asking you like, oh, do you work with investors? Because I saw that you were an agent. And then from there, you were helping me with like comps and stuff like that because I was brand new in wholesaling. I had no idea what in the hell I was even doing. But you were just such a nice person. I remember like messaging you late night asking you about comps because I was really just grinding daily trying to get a deal closed. And you were right there sending me videos and like showing me like what the MLS was saying. Yeah. That was dope.
So like when we first met, right, I always tell people, and I talk about this a lot in the group too, right? During that time, I vividly remember being the worst employee ever, right? Like I was in a unique position to take the sacrifice, right? But how much I wanted to succeed in real estate really showed because my job used to schedule me from 3 p.m. to like 12 p.m. I would come in at 8 o'clock.
Oh.
I would come in at 8 o'clock and then like work from 8 to 12. And then it got so bad to the point where they were about to fire my manager for not firing me.
Wow.
Exactly. And then luckily he knew like what I was doing, right? Because I used to like, when I got started, I used to door knock. There was a guy that I was like kind of like shadowing in the beginning. We used to door knock. He used to tell me to put door hangers on people's apartment buildings. So literally that's all I did in the beginning. Like as like a regular realtor trying to get a deal was door knock, door hangers. He would tell me to like stake out at like a Starbucks and then just strike conversations with people. Wow. And that's literally what I did. Everything he told me to do, I literally did. And then I always knew that I wanted to work with investors. So I always kind of like gravitated to the wholesale side. But literally in the beginning, I was doing whatever I needed to do to try to like get a deal though. Right? Yeah. And then when I started working with buyers on like the regular realtor side, I would sacrifice like coming in late for my job to go show them a house, show them 2-3 houses before work. And sometimes I would do the opposite. Sometimes I would come in on time. but then I would leave early.
Oh.
And then it was just kind of like, I think they used to have like a point system, right? And then I can't remember how many points you had until you got fired. I think it was like 12. I was at 11.5 for the longest.
Oh my God.
Like I was walking on thin ice for the longest. And I just always had that mindset of like, especially around that time, like 2018, 2019, this was like my only career field that I was like heavily pursuing at the time. Wow. And then once I got the proof of concept down, like my first deal as a realtor was like $9K. And then once I got the proof of concept down, I'm like, hey, it's 9 to 5, ain't paying me $9K to, you know what I'm saying, show people houses and stuff like that. But yeah, that was more so like the intentional sacrifice that I did early on when I first got into real estate. You know?
Yeah, and that builds character too. So like going through that day-to-day lifestyle of hustling and not kind of knowing where you're going to go with it, but just kind of having that faith and that trust that this is going to be something that could work.
Yeah, I think I'm a big believer that all work works at some point in time, right? Even though I never really got a deal out of door knocking or door hangers, like it showed me how to handle rejection at a very early age. Because like door knocking, you're actually physically popping up to someone's house that you know nothing about.
Facts.
You don't know who gonna open the other door. You don't know if you're gonna get cussed out, say hello. You know what I'm saying? They probably thought I was Jehovah's Witness.
Okay, I'm telling you.
And I remember distinctly this one seller, because we used to door knock in South Tampa.
Oh, wow.
And South Tampa is like a prevalent, a really affluent neighborhood, right? And it was this one lady who like, she kind of wanted to get into wholesaling. And she thought we was trying to like wholesale her house. And I'm like, no, I'm really trying to like just sell your house for you if you want to, you know, like sell. And it was just more so like that process showed, even though I didn't know what I was doing. And most of the time when I like knocked on doors and people opened it, I didn't know what I was going to say. I didn't have no script to follow. He was just like, just talk with people. Brent Daniels is another big person that was like big on that TTP, just talk to people.
Exactly.
Right? So like the very early stages just showed me how to like build character and be more fluid. And I always say that prior to getting to real estate, I was a complete introvert.
Yeah, how was that? What were you doing before real estate?
My goodness. So before real estate, I was in like so many things because I always had like an entrepreneurial spirit, right? Probably went from video editing. I used to shoot music videos for rappers. I used to be a battle rapper. I used to...
wait, what?
Oh my goodness. I used to battle rap for money here and there. We're not going to get too deep into that because that was a different stage of my life. But I legit enjoyed it. I enjoyed the art form of just spoken word in general too. That's kind of like where it was birthed from. I kind of like threw into battle rap by accident. I told you that story. So I used to do music videos for artists. I remember like charging like $150 for a music video.
Wow.
I used to be in trap houses. I used to go in like different neighborhoods. Like sometimes I'll be in like St. Pete. Then I'll go to like Orlando. I would lose money trying to make money. Because if you know like gas from here to Orlando to do a video for $150, by the time I got back home, that $150 was gone. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But it was just more so like I was just committed to like always trying to like make a way for myself. You know what I'm saying? The end of 2020 was like my last time having like a legit job.
Yeah.
And I didn't really have many jobs as a teenager. I worked at McDonald's. And then I started working with kids a little bit.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
From there, but it was for, at the time they had the host program. So it was like after school.
Oh, okay.
And then from there, I started working at Chipotle. And then I got fired from Chipotle. Every job I had, I probably like either left or got fired.
So you're just a bad employee altogether.
I just knew I was a bad employee because I always aspired to have more. Yeah. In a sense of like, you know, when you're working at those type of jobs, in my mind, I felt like very restricted in a sense, where it's just kind of like, damn, I want to have fun with my friends.
Yeah,
like, you know, and naturally when I was younger, I had older friends. So it was just like, I didn't know what they was doing. They was probably doing whatever they was doing at the time, but I always seen like the freedom that they had, you know what I'm saying? And then at the time, I didn't know they had the freedom because they had higher paying jobs and $7, $10 an hour. But I just always aspired to just kind of be like, you know, fluid in how I move, how I operate. And then also, I remember not feeling good when I used to get off work. Like, in a sense of like, man, the whole day is gone and all I've done was just flip burgers, take orders, and, you know.
Like, you feel like you're missing out on life.
Yeah. And I always say, like, I've learned a lot from bad examples, right? I'm a firm believer that you can learn a lot from that. So I used to see, like, family members hate their job and, like,
same.
You know what I'm saying? Like, just be stuck. And I'm like, I don't want that for myself.
Yeah. And just feel like there's no other option. I hated that. Now, as far as like after you started developing, you know, your business and started closing deals, how was that for you as like a realtor? Were you more on like the retail side, or did you just kind of mix?
So I would say the first year I was like heavily focused on like the realtor side. Year 2, I started mixing them up a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But what I started noticing was, like I said, like in the beginning, I always wanted to gravitate towards working with investors.
Mm-hmm.
So in the beginning, when I used to ask people like, how do I get better at working with investors? From a realtor standpoint, a lot of realtors that were experienced really didn't know how to answer that question.
Wow.
And then what I also noticed was one of the biggest things that I used to ask was, how did you transition from working a full-time job to like providing for yourself? Because real estate is like a commission-based job. It's not like you get paid every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And I could not find for the life of me like anyone that could give me a solid answer on how to make that transition. I just took a leap of faith. I was just like, bump it. I'm going to just go full-fledged with it, you know? And it wasn't an easy decision to make, because it was more so like, again, a 21-year-old saying that, yo, I'm going to do real estate. My pops looked at me crazy when I first told him. He was like, what? Like commission? What are you talking about? Commission-based job.
Yeah.
You need to get a paying job.
That's that foreign parent.
And I'm like, what? So my dad is like he's from the islands. He's very hardworking. So he's been at his job for 35 plus years.
Wow.
And it's just kind of like he's committed to his job, but I can kind of see like he had other dreams. He's always had other dreams. He wanted to be a soccer player. He wanted to go travel.
Wow.
And I learned from the sacrifices he made. But I also knew at an early age that I don't want to be in a position to give up what it is that I want to do just for the sake of like my children having a happy life.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And I don't say that selfishly, but I say it in the sense of like, I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that I don't have to make that decision and still be able to have the options and the freedom to do whatever it is that I want to do. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I agree, because I remember when I left my job as a teacher, having a degree, and my parents looking at me like, yo, you were supposed to be at this job for 30 plus years. And you're leaving in year, what, 4? You know, I was a disappointment at first, right?
Yeah.
To every Caribbean parent.
Like if you got Caribbean parents, you know.
Oh, yeah. They don't play that. Especially when you have a degree, you go to college, and then you want to leave that job to become an entrepreneur. They don't understand that really. So I had to cut my family off. So like when I first met you, I remember being in that life where I cut everybody off. Like if you had no value to bring to the table to help me excel to the next level, you were getting cut off.
Yeah.
And that was a very tough decision to make at that time, being so scared and not knowing like, oh my gosh, am I going to be able to make ends meet? I was a nervous wreck at that time, but I had faith and I had trust that this would work. I had to put in that work to do that. You know, you're a realtor, you start seeing success on both the real estate side or the wholesaling side and the retail side. What made you gravitate more towards like the investor side of real estate?
So me, I guess my thought process is just the way I think is always like the way my brain works is always constantly putting together puzzles, right? Just by nature, right? Once I did a few realtor deals that had to do with financing, I was like, how do I get this to be a little bit more consistent? And then I thought to myself, dealing with the people that have the money to just buy it, cash. Wow. You get what I'm saying? So it's just more so like when I used to ask the questions and I couldn't find answers to my questions, I just naturally kept looking until I found the answer. And then I remember like the quickest deal I ever did, like when I did wholesale houses, the dude closed in like 7-10 days.
Wow, yeah.
And I'm just kind of like, much rather prefer this route than waiting 30, 45 days to someone to get approved for financing, going through the inspection period, having the appraisal, you know what I'm saying? Because what they don't tell you when you start off as a realtor is you're holding your breath a lot. You're literally at the mercy of these individuals' emotions, appraisals, the state of the market. Sometimes people have buyer's remorse. So this is kind of like that, you know, since it's a large investment, rightfully so, they're like, oh, no, I don't want this one anymore. I remember distinctly like my first deal, God bless this lady, because she ended up being a good friend afterwards, but she was giving me the hardest time picking out a house. Wow. And we was going through Lennar and stuff like that. And in my mind, I was just like, I just don't want to deal with that. You get what I'm saying? Like I'm a very like analytical person where it's either the facts or nothing else. And dealing with investors gave me that, you know, power to just deal with people that's just looking at like, does it make sense? Yes. All right, let's move forward. If it doesn't, no. So that's what naturally gravitated me towards like the wholesale side, in the sense of like you deal with more logical people, right? And also you get a quicker turnaround. And then there's more room to kind of like make the type of money that you want to make, right? So like as wholesalers, most people don't realize is we're low-key value creators.
Absolutely.
Right? So like the more value you can provide to these investors, the bigger your spread can possibly get. So it just that was always my thought process, was like, okay, the better I become at finding deals, at people that have liquid cash to spend on these, I might as well just get better at that.
Yeah. So, being that you're on the Landing the Deal podcast, we want to know about your land deals. Yeah. So how did you transition from like houses to land?
Honestly, the transition took me a long time because even though like we were always in constant communication, I was like still stuck on houses for a long time. I remember you did the conference 2020, right, in Atlanta. And then that was in August, right? October. And it wasn't until January, February when I really started taking action. So it took me a couple of months because the biggest hurdle that I had was, how do I go from comping houses to comping land?
Yeah.
Like I could not get past that mental block whatsoever for whatever reason. So it was October, and then January, February was it when I really started taking the land stuff serious. And my first 4 or 5 deals was with you, was JVs with you.
Wow.
And I remember the first one was a lady named Miss Janice. It was in Wedgefield.
Okay.
And she asked me if I had a website. And prior to that, I've never had a website ever in my life. But what I did was, realtors had access to this thing called HomeSnap. Okay. And at the time, you could like get on HomeSnap and make a website for $100. Wow. And it would literally just pop up all of your transactions that you ever did. And I just went on there real quick, paid her my $100, sent it to her, and then she was like, oh, okay, cool. Wow. And that's what actually got her to sign the contract.
Wow.
Was because she's seen all of my past performance. And then the cool thing about that was, and this is what I love about like learning about door knocking and stuff like that, she actually could have taken a higher offer.
Wow, but she didn't.
She went with me because I took time to talk to her.
Wow.
She was like, we're literally turning down a $65,000 offer to go down to 50 for you. We sold it to the buyer for like 60 something. And I was like, okay, yeah, I appreciate you. Wow. You know what I'm saying? So I sent her a little closing gift after that as well. But yeah, that was like my first deal like in land and stuff. And then again, like the first 5 I did with you.
Yeah, I know that starting off with land, a lot of people don't realize, being that it's so virtual, having a website is going to make things seem more legit if the seller wants to know a little bit about your company. So having that ability to think super fast like that, because a lot of people would have freaked out and probably wouldn't have sent anything, or took like 2 or 3 days and it would have been 2 or 3 days too late. Someone else could have gotten them, right? Yeah. And then as far as, that transitioning for you, and you said you closed your first 5 deals with me?
Yeah.
Okay. And then how did that transition, like doing it on your own?
I mean, I just started connecting the dots, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't think we ever like had a session where you had to tell me like, all right, Francisco, do this, this, and this. It was just more so like, and I always tell people, even the students in the pod and stuff like that, when you learn how to kind of like adapt to situations, you kind of learn as you go. And then one of the things that like I've learned along the way is you don't know how to do it the right way until you get it wrong.
Exactly.
So just kind of like once I had the confidence to start going out and doing it on my own, it was almost like, okay, it's the same thing with doing houses. It's just you're doing it with land and no infrastructure on the piece of property. So it was like an easy transition. And then I just started getting more obsessed with like the analytical side of the business, like creating systems and stuff like that. And that process within itself was like, I'd probably say like a 2.5 year process.
Wow. So systems.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that a little bit, because we want to know. So like, as far as your systems and things like that, like there's a lot of people that come into the space of real estate and they don't take the time to really know the back end and the systems and create ways to, make things easier for them going forward, right? And you were able to do that. Yeah. So talk about that as far as like what you were able to do.
I mean, like I said, it was like a 2-year process of like just bumping my head, falling on my face. And I think the biggest thing that clicked for me was like, anybody knows if you do stuff repeatedly over and over again, you kind of get a sense of how time consuming it can be.
It's like contracts and all of that.
You get what I'm saying? So it's just kind of like you start realizing like, dang, I got to talk to a seller. I got to figure out which ones are interested. I got to figure out which ones I got to follow up with. I got to figure out which ones said no to me, but I got to call them later at a separate time. I got to figure out like, okay, if you are interested, how do I send you a contract in a short amount of time so you don't forget who I am? You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So like over the course of time, I just started realizing like, dang, as wholesalers, as realtors, there's a lot that we have to do.
Repetitive tasks.
And repetitive tasks over and over. And I remember 2020, I was like, man, how can I make this easier for myself? At the time, I didn't know what I was doing was putting together systems. You get what I'm saying? I was just like, how can I make everything more cohesive, more like fluent, more congruent? And then I just naturally just started putting the pieces together.
Yeah, because I was like working like 16 hours a day at one point, like just every single day. Yes, I was making money closing deals, but like 16 hours a day, that's like insane. So you have to eventually start thinking, okay, is this really what my time is worth at this point, right? And then you started building out your business as far as the back end and the systems. What little things did you start automating?
I think one of the first things I started automating was the follow-ups. Okay. Because like I realized that I was leaving a lot of money on the table in regards to like remembering who I had a conversation with and then making sure that I continue that conversation at a later time.
Follow-up is so important. I feel like a lot of people miss that mark as far as like following up. I hated when I was texting a seller that I talked to like months before and they said, we already sold it. And I'm like, damn it. Like if I would have just followed up with you or had something to automatically follow up with you, I would have closed that deal potentially, right? But
you know what's crazy? In the very beginning, real estate school, they don't teach you that.
No.
They teach you like the glamorous side. They teach you like the checks. They teach you, you know, like everything that comes along with, you know, being in real estate. But they don't really harp on the business side of it, you know, and I think like 60-70% of people that we make contact with the first time, they don't want to do business with you. You know what I'm saying? Away. Like they don't know you from a can of paint.
Yeah.
You're literally a bug contacting them saying like, yo, you want to sell your property or whatever people say nowadays, right? And then I always equate it to, you know, those people in the malls that be in the middle of the mall trying to sell stuff and they come up to you.
Oh yeah, they be handing you stuff.
And it's like, that's one of the most annoying things ever.
It is. I'm like, leave me alone.
Exactly. But then when you get into real estate, you notice that we kind of become those people.
Oh God.
You get what I'm saying? So it's just kind of like you have to figure out a way to like switch the dynamic and then also remember like, okay, just because they don't want to do business right now doesn't mean that later on down the line they won't be able to. You know what I'm saying?
Plant that seed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then in the very beginning, we didn't have the luxuries that we have now in regards to like the, you know, like CRMs that's kind of like all in one and automations and stuff like that. So it's like you either were starting off with a Google sheet, your Google you know what I'm saying? Like writing down
this
manually.
Is true.
Like,
this is true. But like we didn't have the money for that either. It's like when you're first starting out and you're like, I don't even know if this is really going to work. Am I going to put like $100 a month into $100 a month? Like when you got no money like that, $100 a month just for one tool is expensive.
I think everybody used to do this, Netflix it, where if you had like a prop stream account, I probably had like 10 prop streamers account when I first started.
Oh yeah.
7-day free trial.
7-day free trial. Cancel it right before I put my timer and remind me. What?
I used to text my auntie, let me get your email address real quick.
What? We used to run through all the family members, all the friends for the emails. Exactly. That was insane.
Exactly.
But hey, that's just the grind that builds the character.
I think that comes a part of it, you know what I'm saying? And then once you start learning about like better tools, I remember at one point there were like tools that were like $2,000 just to get, it was like REI Black Box or something like that. Podio was a big one. You know what I'm saying?
Reonomy. Remember that was like $10K a year? Some crazy. Like,
yeah. You start realizing like, okay, if I want to make this more efficient, I probably have to invest more on like the back end stuff that makes my job easier.
But when you start closing deals and making money and you start seeing like the return, you're like, oh shoot, I can make a lot of money doing this. How can I scale this and talk to more people and close more deals? Is by pouring back into the business.
Yeah.
Did you feel like you had a hard time doing that when you first started? Like really closing deals and making money?
Yeah, I so too, because I think the transition period and making everything like concrete and uniform, it takes like a certain mindset to kind of like adapt to that. You know what I'm saying? Because it's like when you first start out, you're not necessarily running a business to begin with. You're just hustling. You know what I'm saying? Like you're doing this on the side, and this is more so like at your leisure. And then once you start seeing like, okay, I did this 4, 5, 6, 7 times. Okay, now I got some money saved aside. Okay, I can't be the only one that do this by myself. You know what I'm saying? And then for those people that think a little bit further down the road and a little bit more in depth in regards to what it is that they're doing, then those are the people that transition into saying like, okay, let me put things in place, people in place to make this easier on myself. Because nothing sucks more than making a lot of money and being too tired to enjoy it.
I'm telling you, that's what I was doing, working 16 hours a day and not being able to enjoy anything. Not even learning how to invest the money that I was making.
Exactly.
Now, as far as you being a realtor during this time of you closing land deals, how did that affect you as far as like your brokerage and things like that? Did you ever have any like issues as far as being an agent and doing this?
No, honestly, like when you do deal, at least with me, right? When I was doing deals as a realtor and under my brokerage, and I think I've been to maybe like 3-4 different brokerages at this time by now, right?
Dang. Is that common to move that much?
I mean, most people do, because I mean, in the beginning, I was really looking for like an investor-friendly brokerage.
Oh, okay.
And then like I started off with Keller Williams. Immediately, I was like, absolutely not for me. Like, I remember a distinct situation where I was like, network with like-minded individuals and also people that look like you know what I'm saying, for the first time. And then I remember going to shake this guy's hand and he just hit me with this like, yo, pal, I'm so glad to see you. And I'm like, oh, okay.
Oh, it ain't like that, right?
Okay, cool. All right, cool. No problem. Then I was like, all right, let me find, like different brokerage. And then I started to realize from the realtor's standpoint, if I'm doing 100% of the work, why am I giving you a portion of my money?
Exactly.
That's just my thought process.
That's why I'm not licensed, y'all.
I was like, if I'm like talking to these people, door knocking, doing all these other things, why am I giving you a percentage of anything?
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying? And then I was like, okay, well, ideally being at 100% brokerage would probably be my only bet. You know what I'm saying? So then I found a couple 100% brokerages that I wanted to go to, and I was like, okay, cool. So this is where I'll stay at.
Did you have to give your percentages even wholesaling to them?
No.
Oh, okay.
No.
How does that work as far as like you being an agent and closing deals? Are you like acting as in an LLC? Is that how you're doing it?
So I close all of my deals under my LLC. I let the sellers know like, hey, like the buyer that owns this LLC is also licensed. So, we're buying this property for investment purposes. As far as my broker, I mean, you can have a conversation with them. I advise realtors just to let the broker know what it is that you're doing. Mm-hmm. Some brokers, depending on, like how they feel about it, some of them will like use the properties that they wholesale as credit for them being a realtor, so they can like maybe put it on the MLS as I sold this property. But me necessarily, I really don't harp on that too much, because it's kind of the biggest credit that I look for is the deposit on my bank account. Okay. So it's just kind of like,
nobody cares about what the spreadsheet says.
Exactly. So it's just kind of like, I never really cared to add that under my belt as like, look at all of the deals that I've done, because realtor transactions are realtor transactions and wholesale transactions are wholesale transactions.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? So if you're like acting in your own interests, most brokers don't have a problem with you going, doing that. As long as you let them know and, like you make them aware of what kind of business you run and stuff like that, they should be cool with it.
Did you like regret getting your license at all?
No, I think
Do you encourage people to get their license?
Yes.
Okay.
Not because I want everybody to be realtors, but at least from my standpoint, I don't think I would have understand wholesaling as fast and as well as I do now had it would have not been for me getting my real estate license. You know what I'm saying? And a part of the reason why I also encourage people to get their license is just use it as a tool belt. You know what I'm saying? Like, you have a little bit more advantages having your license than not having it. I'm actually thinking about getting licensed in Georgia, Texas, and maybe Arizona, maybe.
Wow.
Just because it's like, if you want to expand your reach and expand the type of knowledge and reach that you have, I would just get it. You know what I'm saying? Because most people aspire to have MLS access. What they say, prop stream is like the poor man's MLS.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying? So it's just like, to me, it makes sense to just like, okay, you might as well just get it. You know what I'm saying? Just to have it. There are some fees that come along with being a realtor, like yearly dues and stuff like that. But I mean, it's well worth it if you're using it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So
exactly.
Yeah.
Now I want to go back to the systems, because I think that's super important. I think that separates you from a lot of wholesalers that I know as far as creating those systems. Like, do you have a team? What does that look like for you on your back end?
So right now I have a team of like 3 like American people and 1 VA. Okay. For the wholesale side. And then as far as like systems, what I also realized about that is, if you are going to like make steps to building a team, the mistake that I made very early on when I started hiring VAs is I made them do everything. Oh God. You get what I'm saying? Like, I sign a contract, talk to the seller, talk to the buyer, do everything, right? And then what I failed to realize is they're humans as well too. Right. So the easiest thing to kind of like build a team or build any system or process is have your team members only be subject matter experts. So like the acquisition, they're only doing acquisition stuff. Yeah. And then
so you're like mixing it all together as far as like giving them, a mix of different tasks.
Well, in the beginning, that was a mistake that I made. Okay. But now acquisition, they're only doing acquisition tasks. Got it. And then disposition, they're only doing disposition tasks. Our transaction manager, she's only doing transaction manager's tasks. You know what I'm saying? So like the way it flows is if you kind of like have everything segmented and then you just allow it to be passed off. Because the idea is to have everything run like a conveyor belt. So acquisition gets it locked up, and then boom, sends it to dispo, and then they go ahead and they're responsible for finding the buyers, selling it, doing whatever they need to do. And then dispo is not worrying about anything that acquisition got to do. Acquisition not worried about anything dispo got going on.
And how does it work as far as like that team dynamic? Do you have like team calls to where everyone kind of talks to each other, or you kind of keep them?
Team calls will be ideal, right? I remember in the very beginning, I used to be very big on that. And then one mistake that I make, and I always tell people, I learn more from my mistakes than I have my wins, right? So one of the pitfalls I had very early on, once I started like building momentum, is I started getting too cocky and not showing up to the calls.
Oh God.
Right. But hear me out. In the beginning, right, when you start closing deals and then you get a taste of like, oh, my team can handle this. In the beginning, you start feeling like, maybe I could take a couple of weeks off. They got everything, you know what I'm saying? You got everything under control. Y'all got this. I'm out. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But then I realized was that starts rubbing off on them. You know what I'm saying? Because if you're not showing up, what incentive they have to show up?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because if they're still getting a weekly check, if they're still getting the weekly bonuses, if you know what I'm saying, they're just kind of like, I'm gonna just milk this as much as I can. You know what I'm saying?
Was like sales decreasing when that period was?
Yes.
Oh God.
You get what I'm saying? And then you start realizing, you start noticing like, yo, I ain't getting no wire this month. What's going, you know what I'm saying? What's going on?
But I still got to pay y'all.
Right. So it's one of those things where it made me like, increase the leadership skills and then also have safeguards in place to make sure like, okay, if this doesn't happen, I get alerted so I can get ahead of it as opposed to reacting to things, if that makes sense. Right. Big part of systems has to do with team building.
Yeah. And leadership.
Yeah. And leadership as well too. Right. So making them subject matter experts, increasing your leadership abilities, and then also just increasing the culture around your team. You know what I'm saying? I like to refer to them as team members and not employees. That's just me though.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying? Because it's kind of like
setting the tone.
Right. They're a big vital part in what you do to your day-to-day, you know, stuff. So it's kind of like, I won't be able to do all of this myself, and I clearly won't be able to do it without them assisting in, you know, their certain roles and stuff like that. But yeah. And another thing that I always tell the pod students is you can't put a good person in a bad system.
Facts.
You know what I'm saying? And then very early on, when I didn't have things in order, I probably put good VAs in position, but I didn't have the system set up for them to succeed. You get what I'm saying? So it's kind of like a bad system is going to beat out a good person every single time.
Yeah. I remember for me starting out, I was like a terrible leader. I didn't know how to lead a team. Like I said, had that cocky mentality, didn't show up when I needed to, and then got really frustrated really easily with them. Like, oh my God, you told a seller this? Like, why would you say that? You're fired. You're done. Bye. You're out of here. And it's like, I did that so many times, Francisco. I rinsed and repeated through VAs. Like, you would think something was wrong with me.
And then you know what we realized when we be so quick to fire them? Now we got to spend more time training the replacement.
I'm talking about hours and hours. And I didn't even know about like creating Loom videos to like record. So I'm over here spending weeks at a time training multiple VAs, and then they got the sauce. They're learning my stuff all at the same time. What things did you do as far as like building up those leadership skills?
I started reading a lot of books.
You have any books you want to drop for us?
So Developing the Leader Within You, John C. Maxwell has a whole series about he has a whole series of books dedicated to leadership. Another thing is I just started watching a lot of interviews based on leaders that I like admired and stuff like that, right? And that kind of helped me kind of like set the tonality. And I've always been a learner that learned from different resources and then combine the things that like I really, really liked and then kind of combinate it into my own. You get what I'm saying?
Whatever resonated with you.
Yeah, so just kind of like a lot of books, watching a lot of interviews, and also just kind of like practicing, you know what I'm saying? And then when I was thinking back to my time as a horrible employee, I appreciated the good managers that I did have, you know what I'm saying? Like I remember one manager specifically, Kevin, the reason why he was so lenient on me was because he also wanted to get into real estate as well too. And then I remember him like always coming to work, like very punctual, always like in a suit and tie, in an environment where he didn't have to do that.
Yeah.
When we used to work at this call center, there wasn't no dress code.
Yeah.
And he also used to come sharp, suit and tie. On the leadership calls, he always used to have like everything like lined up, ready to go. Yeah. Like the way he coached you, even when you did something bad, he was just very like, listen, you can improve. I know you can do better. Maybe try doing this, try doing a little bit less of that. And then that always stuck with me because I'm like, man, like he takes this job serious and this isn't what he wants to do.
Yeah.
And then that manager, Kevin, stuck with me a lot because I'm like, he wasn't lenient just because he didn't want to do his job.
Yeah.
He was kind of like, okay, at the time, he's seen a certain individual that inspired to do more and wanted to do more. You just didn't have the structure to do it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And then what I realized later on was like he was taking those principles that he was using in corporate America
mm-hmm.
and probably applying it to his actual business when he actually wanted to leave and stuff like that.
Yep. And that develops a great team, being able to do that, being able to like not discipline, but give advice. So I'm sure by Kevin showing up to his job daily like that, created a lot of discipline for him to what he was really trying to do.
Yeah.
So what was it for you, Francisco, that made you really think like, okay, you know what? I need to put systems in place because this is just getting too much for me.
It was probably the middle of 2021, right? And it was a period of time where I was so locked in that my dad, my family, they didn't hear from me for a long time. I would see the calls and I would see the text messages pop up on my phone, but I was just like so heavily invested in like talking to sellers. And again, I was trying to do everything myself. It got to a point where like 3 months went by, he had to literally come to my apartment. And it was like, yo, you okay?
You
like,
alive?
What's going on? You know what I'm saying? And I didn't realize, even still to this day, time goes by really quickly to me. You know what I'm saying? So it's kind of like, in my mind, those 3 months just felt like 1 or 2 weeks. You get what I'm saying? Yeah. But I was just like always talking to sellers. And then I remember one particular month, me and Tay, we probably racked up like $60K each in Palm Coast.
Wow.
But it was just because we were talking to sellers consistently. We had a builder that was closing in like 5 days as soon as title came back. So it was kind of like, bro, 2021 was like the best year ever. It was like a roller coaster year. But that was the year where I started figuring out like, yo, I can't keep doing this because I was drained and still going. And it's like, I don't even remember what I was doing, but only thing that I could remember was just kind of like, when weekends came, I ain't want nothing to do with my computer. You get what I'm saying? Like, I ain't want nothing to do with talking to those sellers, especially on those Sunday. You know what I'm saying? I was like, bump it. I'm going to get back to you on Monday. You know what I'm saying? But that was the moment where I realized, like, okay, maybe I should probably put things in place to try to, like, manage this from a team standpoint, right?
Yeah.
And then when you asked me, like, the first systems I set in place was follow-up. And I think probably the next one was probably just keeping track of the offers that I was sending out, but were getting rejected. You get what I'm saying? Because you can also double back at some point in time with those people.
Oh, yeah.
And then that period of time kind of showed me the gist of marketing, right? Because in any business, it's not a probability game. It's just more so on improving your conversion rate. So the name of the game is just getting in front of as many people as possible and then tracking how many people it takes for you to convert.
Yeah.
Or like how well can you convert out of 100 people?
Like based on what you're saying, what you're doing, what your follow-up methods are, when you're reaching out to them, how often.
Right. So the way I break it down to students in the group now is if you give 100 offers to people, right? What percentage of those people can you convert to give you a yes?
Yep.
And then it's more than just like, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I can give you $40,000 for your lot. You get what I'm saying? What I started realizing when it comes to like creating systems is systems provide you a framework to keep track of stuff.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of like before when we started early on, it was kind of like, oh, you want to sell for 50,000? You want to sell for 250? If they said no, it was just kind of like, all right, boom, we forget about it. You know what I'm saying? But
that's how you lose out on money. That's how you leave money on,
Right.
Yeah.
So then what I started learning, and the beauty about all of this is I didn't know that's what I was doing when I was setting all of this up.
Yeah.
Right. It wasn't until afterward I realized like, oh, okay, this is putting together a system. You know what I'm saying? Because in real time, I'm just putting together the puzzle pieces. You know what I'm saying? That no one else is like coaching for whatever reason. And if they are coaching, they're charging like $18,000, $20,000.
Yeah,
right?
just to even get that close of information.
Exactly. Yeah. So then it was just putting the puzzle pieces together. And then I start realizing like, okay, if I want to improve and get more serious about this, I probably need to track how well I'm doing performance-wise.
Those KPIs.
Exactly. And then tracking performance is a big key part of systems because it's kind of like if you don't know how to duplicate what it is that you're doing, I always tell people how you plan on scaling this.
Yeah.
Because you can't even tell me what you did to get one deal. How are you planning to get 10 deals?
Yeah.
If you don't even know what you did to get one. So it's just more so like honing in on like the skill set of mastering, tracking what it is that you're doing, tracking your progress over a course of time. You're not going to get perfect all of the time. You know what I'm saying? And there's many different ways to skin a cat and track KPIs. But I think the biggest thing is more so like staying consistent and mastering that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that played a big part in like understanding systems as a whole. goal, right? Because if it wasn't for that moment, I probably would have still been drowning in, you know, like deals and doing everything myself. And there's no reward in that. Yes, the money is great, but what 2021 showed me was the money doesn't necessarily mean anything if you can't necessarily educate yourself to invest it. Because if you spend all your time, you know, doing this, if this can't work without you, you basically just a high paid employee. So it's just like,
that's exactly what I was going through. I remember for me, like before I started actually putting systems in my business, I knew I had to scale because I kept forgetting about deals. We would literally get deals under contract that I know my builder would want. Like we knew how to analyze those deals perfectly. We knew he wanted it. We got it under contract and we would miss out on, or we would forget to give it to the builder.
Wow.
And I'm talking about, there was one month, I remember the exact amount. We missed out on $41,000 worth of assignment fees because we forgot. And it was multiple deals, little deals here and there. But we forgot to give it off to our buyer. Completely forgot. So the seller would be calling us at the end of the month saying, hey, where's the deal? Are we closing? Like tomorrow? And I'm like, oh my Jesus. I completely forgot to send it back. But that's how you know, like, okay, no, you're doing too much, sis. Like, you got that many deals that you're forgetting about $41,000 in a month.
That's a lot. It's adding up real quick. Like you said, start adding up real quick.
Yeah, it starts adding up. You start losing money because you don't have those systems in place. For me, that was one of the biggest things. And then I think also finding good VAs to work for me and put in that time and energy into my business, my baby. Have you ever had any situations with like a VA that try to pull a fast one on you?
Bro, I had VAs like try to work for me and still work for other people at the same time.
Full time?
Yes, full time.
Wow.
Like I don't knock the hustle. I understand that, you know, like they have to make ends meet as well too. But it was just kind of like, to me, it draws the line on like how ethical are they?
Okay, yeah.
You get what I'm saying? Because it's like, if you're going to work for me as a real estate client and you got another real estate client that you're working with at the same time.
You might confuse something.
I was like, hey, bro. You know what I'm saying? So it's just kind of like, that you have to be mindful of. Time Doctor is a good resource for people that want to like track what their VAs are doing and stuff like that. But yeah, I've had like crazy experiences with VAs. But what I've ended up learning was the VAs are a good reflection of how much time you put into your business. You get what I'm saying? I remember, and I'll always brag on this. Hopefully God can like reconnect us again, because there was this one particular VA, bro. He did everything for me. Wow. He closed this one deal by himself. I didn't do anything. He talked to the seller. He did the contract. He sent it to the buyer. He did the assignment. He did everything.
Wow.
It was this one particular deal, everything on. And the only reason I allowed him to do everything was because like what I used to do was I used to kind of like incentivize them to get promoted. So I'm just kind of like, if you figure out how to do all this, you know, you can kind of like run the VAs once we get some more.
Ooh.
You get what I'm saying? So he used to try to like learn how to do everything. So he was like super intentional about like proving to me that, yo, I can do all of this if you want me. I'm like, no. But this one particular deal, he did everything. And literally I was like, yo, I need more of you.
Where is he at now?
But let me tell you what happened. So life started happening to him, right? So one week it was his wife getting sick. Then the next week his kids getting sick.
During COVID and stuff?
It was probably like, it was 2020. It was towards the end of 2021. So COVID was probably like, people were getting adjusted to COVID already. I don't know how they were dealing with it in the Philippines. So it's like, it might have been different. But every week it was something. You know what I'm saying? I was giving him bonuses. I bought this dude a laptop.
Wow.
Sent it over there. Took like a couple weeks to get there. And then out of nowhere, he's just kind of like, yo, I just can't work for a couple weeks. I'm like, can't work for a couple weeks.
Okay.
I'll give you PTO if you stay. Like, just come back. And he was like, no, I don't know how long it's going to take me to come back, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like,
oh, man.
So, like, eventually we just ended up parting ways and stuff like that. And I'm like, dang, I really wish I had a sock. Because one thing I liked about him was he did not sound like he was from the Philippines.
Wow.
He knew how to do like voice inflections. So literally he was like a master at like accents.
And that's hard to find.
Yes. So I don't know what kind of training he had. He could go from a dude from California to sounding like he was from England to sound like he was like, he was very well versed. So I was like super lucky to have him. But like, yeah, I really wish I would have kept him on. But again, life just happened to him. You know what I'm saying? And then he got on like right when I started building like a whole bunch of SOPs, started tracking everything that I was doing. So he was like striving to like hit those numbers and stuff like that. But yeah, those VAs are literally a reflection of the work that you put in your business and the work that you put into them. Because most people, especially when we started off, the moment they do something wrong, it's like, you out of here, you fired.
Yeah, that was me. I mean,
so it was kind of like, we
guilty.
talked about that. So it was kind of like, you kind of got to give them grace to kind of like learn and mature throughout the process. The biggest thing that I look for is attention to detail, them coming to work on time, and then them actually like wanting to do the work right outside of getting paid.
So what advice do you have for someone that's in a situation where you were in 2021 trying to figure out how to scale and how to automate? What advice do you have for someone that is trying to get to that next level of automating?
I will recommend, one, you read a book called Systemology by David Jennings, right?
Y'all heard that? Say it again, for
Systemology.
Systemology.
Yeah, by David Jennings. And that book literally teaches you step by step the process on how to start automating anything.
Wow.
And then it was that book that kind of inspired me to do like other entrepreneurial ventures in regards to like creating like a system agency and stuff like that. But he basically talks about the book is you start off with just writing down from like a visual standpoint what it is that your business does and how it converts. And it's very like ABC format, right? So he teaches you to pretty much jot down all of the areas where your business gets attention at, and then you highlight the place of conversion of like, okay, you draw their attention here, and then this is where you focus on converting, and then you follow your chain of command from there, right? And then he talks about documenting everything, making either explaining videos, writing down step-by-step processes, putting them in specific folders, and then also creating subject matter experts, like we talked about earlier. And then he literally breaks down from beginning to end how to do these things in 7 steps. And then he goes into a little bit more detail on his coaching program. So it was like, from there, I was like, okay, if I could do this in real estate, I'm pretty sure I could do this anywhere else. You know what I'm saying? So it was kind of like, and me, again, part of my systems is more so like focused on sales. You know what I'm saying? Like increasing your lead generation, increasing your conversion rate. Those are literally the top 2 things that any business harps on.
And that's kind of hard to like, you know, come together and figure out, especially if that's all you're doing is wholesaling and you don't really know the back end and systems and seeing how important it is. Now, you kind of, you know, threw out there a little bit. You said you have a systems agency.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that?
Yeah, pretty much over the course of time, you know, like once I started like experimenting, like I started helping like close friends of mine, like with their systems and stuff like that. At first it was all in like real estate, but then I was like, I really wanted to challenge myself and see like, okay, can I kind of like combinate this into like other industries, right? So I got a barber friend of mine where I was able to automate his booking process, where now he doesn't like have to like necessarily take walk-ins, but they can literally just go on his website and talk to like kind of like a AI bot, and then it's kind of like conversates as like an actual human.
Yeah.
And then it's wired to just set the appointment automatically for him.
Yeah.
Right. And then the biggest thing is also understanding how to capture people's information so you can send them an offer at a later point in time. Even if they don't buy from you right then and there, you have a system to kind of like follow back and be like, hey, I know what we weren't able to, you know, come into agreement this time around, but check this out. I have a special offer giving 30% off for the first 10, 15 people that come in here. Right. So just like honing in on just like creating systems for other businesses. And at the end of the day, business is just marketing. You know what I'm saying? This aha moment came to me where I was like sitting on my couch and then there's a commercial break on. And then normally I never pay attention to commercials. And it was a McDonald's commercial came on. And in my mind, I asked myself, everybody already knows who McDonald's is.
Exactly.
There's a McDonald's on every corner of probably the U.S. and whole continent of the world, right? But yet they still invest massive amounts of money
in marketing
to let people know, yo, this is what we got going on. And then it kind of like dawned on me, was like, okay, dang, the name of the game is really just consistently getting in front of people, doubling your lead generation and converting the attention that you get.
Yeah.
And literally that's the principle with any business, you know what I'm saying? And with wholesaling specifically, that's literally what we're doing. We're just reaching out to a mass amount of people and then converting those amount of people that we pull lists from, we skip trace, whatever we do to get their phone numbers, and then we convert those into contracts.
So as far as like you're converting into contracts, how are you talking to these sellers for you and your business?
So what I like to tell people is I like to set up a framework, right? So when I talk to sellers, I've taken a combination of things that I've learned from this guy named Keith Everett and other coaches that talk about NLP, so neuro-linguistic programming, right? NLP pretty much teaches you the concept of giving suggestive commands. And what I like about it is it's kind of like programming people to kind of expect to do business with you. So you're taking control over the conversation.
Immediately?
Yeah, you're taking control of the conversation from the jump, but it's not in aggressive format. It's almost kind of like in a subtle way to kind of like get them to, okay, we're moving forward to signing an agreement together.
Got it.
So the number one thing that I start off with this framework was asking if there's any other decision makers involved in the process. So before we talk about price, before we talk about like how much you want or what their expectations are, the number one thing I ask them immediately is there anybody else that I need to know about?
Why?
Because the number one objection that people get is, I gotta talk to my husband. I gotta talk to my wife.
That's
I
the
gotta
number
talk.
one.
You get what I'm saying? So
Yes.
it's kind of like immediately I want to neutralize that from the gate. When it comes time to close the sale, they can't be like, oh, well, I gotta still go talk about Mr. and Mrs. Seller. You told me that there weren't any other decision makers when it came to doing it. That's what I learned from Keith Everett, because you don't want to waste your time, and then you want to make sure that you're serious, right? So the number one thing is neutralizing that objection out the gate. Hey, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, is there anybody else that we need to be aware of? I want to make sure I'm giving everyone the proper respect. Is there any other decision makers involved? If they say no, whatever, I proceed to the next thing. Immediately after I confirm that they're the person I need to be talking to, I ask them for their email address. Hey, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, can I get your email address? So once we finish talking about these terms, once I answer any questions you have for me and I ask you a couple of questions, I can send you over the agreement once we finish talking about stuff. Hand me over your email and then we can go ahead and proceed forward. Once they give me their email address, that's my second confirmation that we're about to do business together.
Awesome.
And then the third confirmation of the framework is just more so like, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, okay, so I just want to make sure, like, once we, come into the middle on price and we're able to agree and everything that I say sounds good to you, would we be able to get this completed today so we can be punctual in our closing process?
So explaining the process too.
Right. You get what I'm saying? And then once they give me that third confirmation, I already have their email address. So they're already expecting to get something from me after we finish this conversation.
Got it.
And what they're expecting is to get an offer that they're going to sign and that we're going to agree on price with.
So what are your top 3 things that you would want to tell someone who is watching this and wants to get ready to automate and systematize their business?
So I'm going to answer that in one answer. So the biggest thing that I learned about systems is it's actually a cool acronym. Saving you stress, time, energy, and money is the number one reason why you should get any systems put in place, right? And that's really it, because it's kind of like, if you think about it, there's in all work some type of stress involved in doing it and fulfilling your obligations, right? And then obviously the energy that you put into it, you want to cap it at a minimum. You know what I'm saying? And then obviously money is like, you want to make sure that if you are putting money into your business, especially if you're reinvesting your money into your business, that you're reinvesting that money in the right places. Right. So just having a system that details everything from start to finish, from accounting to billing, what's working and what's not working, systems will save you stress, time, energy, and money.
Yes, Francisco, I can definitely agree with that. And honestly, like, since you started coming in and working with me in my business, like, I've seen a huge increase in my sales. I've seen a huge increase in my students' success. So I definitely can attest that, systems has definitely saved me a lot of time, energy, and absolutely, I made a lot of money. Okay.
Absolutely.
So, Francisco, I appreciate you coming on. It's always a pleasure having you.
Likewise.
You are like my little brother. And I really appreciate, coming together and partnering up and working together on, just making money together.
Well, I appreciate you having me. It was definitely a pleasure coming on the podcast, landing the deal.
Yeah.
We're going to continue working together, obviously making money. And I think that's the beauty about partnerships as well. Creating a system where it's fluid and, obviously the bottom line is to make sure that you're profitable and everybody else is profitable.
Yes, you are absolutely right. I know that we're definitely going to make some more money together. And I know that the ones watching are going to be convinced that systems is what's going to help them land the deal. For
Absolutely.
sure. Thank you so much again.
No problem.